to a daily stream. We're going to try to do this for a month and see how it goes and see if there's anything that happens. You guys can tell me if you like it or not. We're going to check out some stuff and just see if it goes well. So I'm going to just run over some events from today. I want to talk about some of the things I was going over on Twitter, making some tweets, and just look at some information, talk about what's going on with me and what I think is just brewing at the moment. So just doing a quick check to make sure that everything is good, that we're streaming, and all right, we're good. Okay, so first up, this Cody guy. Hey, baby, you can come on stream if you want. Yeah. Cody said, my friend is dumping his 401k and fully going into Bitcoin. Do you think this is smart? And I said, no, this is really dumb. 100% allocation in Bitcoin has way too much risk and way too high of a standard deviation. It is probably the worst thing that you could ever do. I think a lot of people get hung up in 2017. It was an amazing year. Bitcoin went to the moon, essentially. But those returns are probably done. We're probably never going to see those returns again. I know that the divergent stock to flow is very popular because it says that Bitcoin's going to 10x every 4 years when there's a halvening. I think it's completely insane. I think moderate returns from here on out, now that we've gotten pretty much, I believe we've gotten pretty much full-scale adoption, right? Whether that means full-scale infrastructure build-out, connecting apps to Bitcoin, I think that's in the future, right? But everybody that wants to buy Bitcoin already is buying Bitcoin or already holds it and is already using it. So there's nothing added, right? By just having it out there, right? Where you have to ask yourself, it's not a supply question, it's a demand function, because the 90% of Bitcoin is already mined, and we know the inflation schedule over the next 150, 100 years, right? So increasing or decreasing the supply through reducing the flow, right? Yes, it does mean that miners are selling less, but obviously miners keep as much of their Bitcoin as they can because they're making speculative plays on the price to go up. So one of my kind of thoughts about Bitcoin for the long term, doesn't really matter for crypto, is that the volatility never goes away. And volatility is good if you want good returns, but at the same time, it also means a lot of losses. So when a person asks, should I put all my money in Bitcoin? No, is the answer. You can put a smaller amount into a crypto allocation and see good returns that matter over a longer time. So I just want to go over some of the things that I said. So this is what people think is going to happen. So I created a portfolio backtest. You can do this here at portfoliovisualizer.com. You just plug in any asset that you want to and come up with the portfolio allocations, and then it gives you some nice charts, tells you standard deviation, CAGR, and shows you the portfolio growth over time. And so I did that with a couple of things, and we'll take a look at it here. Let's go back to the Twitter post, right? So this Twitter post, right? So this picture actually has 3 portfolios. So I took a Boggleheads portfolio. So portfolio 1 here is a 100% Bitcoin allocation that starts out with $10,000 and adds $500 every single month into their account, and it's been doing that since 2017. I then have another portfolio, which is a 3-fund Bogglehead portfolio, which is it's like a 70 or 64, 16, 20 split between total stock market, total international stock market, and then bond market. And then lastly, I have another portfolio, which is the same as portfolio 2, but it has a 10% Bitcoin allocation. So you can see here that obviously if you bought $10,000 worth of Bitcoin in 2011, or sorry, 2017 at the beginning of the year, you would have made a lot of money because the price went from $1,000 to $20,000. So you'd be up a lot, especially if you're making consistent contributions as well too. And this red line, right, is that 3-fund portfolio, and then even the 10% allocation makes it a pretty big difference when talking about adding it to your portfolio, right? But I chose 2017 because that's the preferable start date. Let's say that you started in 2018, and let's take a look at those same funds again. So here, starting at $10,000, adding $500 every single month, you can see that the 100% Bitcoin portfolio vastly underperforms. It just vastly underperforms. Yes, it catches up and even passes later in July 2019 when the price of Bitcoin went to $14,000, but it still underperforms in the long term. And would you want to have these huge swings, huge standard deviation, huge drawdowns, when you could just have a portfolio that's going up month after month after month? I would probably prefer this. So you can see the allocations that I set out here. It's hard to see, but I already described it earlier. And then lastly, I did a portfolio which was 90% gold, and I did 10% Bitcoin. So 10% Bitcoin, 90% gold from 2016 against the other two portfolios that I was talking about. It performs pretty well, and it actually outperforms in the end the 3-fund portfolio, just because gold has had an awesome year this year. So it's done really well. So that's something to take into account. So no, you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket is kind of the long way around of what I'm getting to. Another article that I read was this Life with SARS-CoV-2, and it was written by Leo Weiss, and he kind of breaks down what life is going to be like post lockdown, and it just doesn't feel right. So I want to highlight some of the things that he talks about. So anyone traveling so his big thing is that tourism is pretty much over as we know it. That tourism industry is never going to recover, which I don't believe. That people will not start traveling again, which I don't believe. And that countries are going to change their visa structure so that the people have a harder time coming into the country. I don't believe that as well too. These countries that exist in Southeast Asia and Europe and other places that are heavily dependent on tourism are not going to shut down the majority of their income from overseas tourists just out of virus fears. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I have no problem with the airlines going bankrupt, but apparently they are getting bailed out. Maybe the low budget ones. Actually, the low budget ones should be fine, right? Because once the volume picks back up, they can operate on decent margins. But he thinks that prices are going to get higher for air travel. I don't think so. I think they'll go down because there'll be huge demand for both domestic and international flights as the lockdown is lifted. People want to travel. I mean, yes, the people that haven't that are older and worried about their health, maybe not will travel as much. Maybe they start just doing domestic flights and not doing international flights. But eventually, within a year or two, everything will be back to normal. Conferences, so nomad culture is at its end. I don't believe this. Travel's not going to become expensive. Southeast Asia and other places are always going to be a destination for nomads. It's cheaper there. There's less taxes. If you're a British citizen and you can just go to Thailand and live there and pay no British taxes while still running your company, and or going anywhere else with a lower tax bill and escaping the high taxes that you would pay at home, that's always going to be there. So nomad culture is not dead. And if anything, it will become more preferable, because why would you want to live in a virus-laden city where there's a higher chance of getting infected when you could live out in the jungle where there's not much. There's a lower chance, right? You're living in the jungle and that's it, right? So I'm I'm pretty I'm pretty sure on that one that that's not going to change. So let me do a noise suppression, noise gate. Can I go to mono? Okay, sorry, I'm just changing it. This is just in mono right now, so I'm trying to. I'll have to figure this out later. But I'm in mono right now, so I'll have to get out of mono eventually. All right. Okay, let's keep on going. So living and working would be harder to separate. Home offices become better equipped. Sure, I want to go back to the office. It's hard to work at home. I have kids. A lot of other people that have kids as well too, pretty much feel the same way that I do. In that, we love our kids, but it's really hard to work at home. You don't have any quiet time because the kids are always coming around, and it's just harder to work. So these people that and the people that think that magically we're just going to work at home. I mean, yes, maybe some companies do. But for the most part, it's nice to be around your coworkers. It's nice to be in an area where you can just bounce around ideas between people, and it actually helps to be in an area where you're meeting people on a day-to-day basis. People cook more. Somehow he thinks that people will live more healthily, eat better, and more fulfilled lives because they're getting more access to their kitchen time because they're living at home. And people want to go back to work. I want to go back to the office, right? So no, I don't think that changes. As for healthcare, it probably is a wake-up call for a lot of Americans because but I think it's in the wrong way. So that people understand. So I think a lot of it will have to do with moving a greater majority of the production of strategically necessary medical goods outside of China and back into the United States. So an onshoring. I mean, this is what Trump was talking about with this whole China thing. So a strategic onshoring of medical products like face masks, ventilators, drugs especially. How much of our prescription drugs do we depend on China for? It's a huge amount, huge. It's a severe weakness that we have in our American economy, that we depend so heavily on other countries to provide drugs, which in an emergency situation are life-saving. It's incredible. And so I see that there's a big onshoring that will happen, and that maybe it comes through increased taxes or just a decree or rules by the government that they have to buy American made, and that Chinese manufactured goods are not cannot be bought anymore, cannot be tendered through any contracts. Medical surveillance will become a thing. I'm sure this will happen. We already have actual surveillance, and Google and Apple have already been talking about ways to track people. So I see medical surveillance. I mean, we do have medical protection laws that should keep companies and other people who are not authorized from gaining access to that medical data. So one of the things that had been talked about a while back was that Jared Kushner would lead let's see if we can find this. Jared Kushner. All right, Jared Kushner, medical data. So Jared Kushner had been put forward as the person to lead this health data surveillance project, and it seemed to me when I read it that it would break all sorts of privacy rules. But privacy doesn't really matter in 2020 anymore, apparently. So after reports showed White House advisor Kushner is creating a nationwide COVID-19 health data surveillance system, members of Congress are probing the effort due to privacy risks, as they should be. So several members of Congress are pressing White House, right? So It's the Democrats, obviously, but it should be both parties. It said that it breaks HIPAA rules, and HIPAA was not designed to support the mass amount of digital health technologies that allow medical data to be shared without consent from patients or providers. So while they may want to build this system that can track people on a granular detail about when they get a temperature, when they are having health issues, this is not something that is just built and then forgotten about. Once they build this health screening, it goes nationwide and it never stops. Right. So, Google's getting involved. I mean, that's scary, right? I don't want Google in my health data. They just would take it all and pump it through their algorithms to come up with better products, pharmaceuticals to sell to me. Who knows? This stuff is scary. So this health surveillance thing, while I'm sure they have good intentions, it's not necessary, and the government isn't there to make life better for us. It's to turn us into greater data points that can be tracked across a vast populace of people. So quarantine becomes more streamlined and institutionalized. Quarantine doesn't last forever. Eventually we go back. There's a vaccine that's developed in 2021. Life goes back to normal. I don't think that there's any strong, lasting effects from this quarantine. You know, the flu came around three times in 1918 in 3 waves, but it doesn't mean that we're still living in fear of the flu. Yes, we have flu vaccines, but it doesn't mean that you have to get one. Passport will contain a health page. No. Why would it contain a health page? So, why would you need to put your permanent health issues, vaccines, and immunities in your identity documents, which could be stolen? I mean, that's more personal information that you should ever give out. So I don't think that'll ever happen. You'll not see mass concerts, conventions for a while. Maybe not in 2020, but 2021, yeah, everything comes back. We have concerts again, and people don't want to sit at home. People don't want to just live in fear of this virus forever. They want to go out. They want to party. They want to dance. They want to go see music. And there's a whole industry, billions and billions of dollar industry globally that depends on having groups of people get together to see artists perform. Sports and competitions will be popular, but they have to reinvent their business models to function without large physical audiences. No, everybody can just wear masks. You can protect yourself with PPE and invite people to come in, provide more hand sanitizer, give masks to everybody coming into the arena. It's not hard. You don't have to shut down an entire industry out of fears of some sort of outbreak. We did it now, but I think there will be reluctance to ever do it again. Once we open up the economy, we're not going to shut it down. We're not going to shut down the economy again. It's too expensive. It puts too many people out of work, and this can only be a one-time exogenous shock. And after that, the effects would be magnified greatly if we ever shut down the economy again. Cinema's not dead, right? So he says that cinema's dead, but cinema's not dead. Why do we have movie theaters if cinema is dead? They'll go through bankruptcy, but they'll be back stronger than ever. I think people like the shared environment of watching these big movies, and COVID-19 is not going to change that. High quality online, yeah, let's skip that. Masks sure, they're here to stay, maybe for this year, maybe next year, but eventually will go away as we have vaccines and everything else. Everybody goes back to normal. That's actually a good idea. Ties and dresses sold with accompanying masks. If you're a designer, you probably should be doing that right now. And yeah, I will happily shake hands with people, and I will continue to shake hands with people once the lockdown is up, because It's a part of our culture, and you can't live in fear forever. So I think the biggest things is that you can't live in fear forever. You can't shut down the economy forever, and eventually life goes back to normal. Whether that takes a year for things to go completely back to normal, people want to be in groups again, I don't know, but I think that it has to happen. We forget things quickly, and keeping people locked up in their homes for months on end is not something that you can do forever. So industries like tourism, entertainment will recover. Yes, they may go through bankruptcy, but those are restructuring. That is for restructuring of the debt, the unsecured debt, and to make the businesses healthy again. You're already starting to see it. There's already businesses that are going bankrupt. So I don't think that this has any significant long-term impact other than what we're seeing now. And as soon as the vaccine hits market within a year, you go back to life as normal. The people that are high risk for it get the vaccine. People that don't mind getting sick probably have better treatment at that point, better scientific evidence about what's good treatment, what's bad treatment. And so things go back to normal. Things go back to normal. That's my thoughts about it. Lockdown is an overreaction. We've not seen our ICUs overrun. We've not seen the amount of deaths that were proclaimed, right? And yes, the lockdown measures have worked, but at what cost? And how many people are going to be out of work once the economy starts, right? Because we can't get back to peak employment just by flipping a switch. It doesn't work like that. So all these people making models and declaring that this is the end of the world, they probably over-promised, and now it's the under-delivering part. So no, I don't agree with anything. Probably 90% of the stuff here I don't agree with. And I've heard some other people on podcasts talk about this, but people want to go back to normal. People want to get back to working and building businesses and having a safe place to live. And this kind of long-term change in lifestyle, I don't think happens. When we're talking about restaurants, bars, conference venues, theme parks, give it a year, right? This year will be tough, but 2021, huge roaring back as people want to spend again. People love going to hotels, to clubs, to cruise ships. Entertainment is a massive industry, and it makes billions of dollars a year. And there's no way that an entire industry would just let itself go by in the case of trying to contain an outbreak, right? So there may be outbreaks again, but it's not going to have the same impact that now does. So I don't know. I mean, you can see my reluctance to agree with this. I think this guy's really Asian-centric, right? He speaks about how things may be in Asia for a long time, but I don't think that we'll see this in the West, right? Because we have different mentalities, and I don't think people are so malleable that as they are in Asia, right? In Asia, you have command economies, especially in China, where they can just tell you that overnight something is banned or changed. But in the States, it's a different perspective, and I don't think that we'll have the same issues. So I 90% disagree with what Leo is saying. Feels like he's writing he's a Bitcoiner, obviously, and runs the Bitcoin Association in Hong Kong. Runs the Hong Kong. Let's look at Leo. So it sounds like someone who's a prepper, some introverted prepper, who's very into cryptocurrencies, which he is, obviously. So I haven't met Leo. I don't know who he is, but I don't agree with his life with SARS-CoV-2, the Wuhan bad flu. um, so yeah, all right, that's gonna wrap it up for today. I will be back tomorrow. Leave some comments. Let me know if I'm totally wrong. If you think I'm dumb for minimizing things, but I don't think that the reaction has been in line with the results, even if the lockdown has worked. So that ends it for me. I will be back tomorrow. Thank you, everybody. This is the end of the chain.